Get started. Thank you to everyone for coming this afternoon. We're really glad to have you all on Mount Versus campus. My name is Joni Howland. I'm the director of the social work program here on campus. So our event this afternoon is fulfilling two purposes. One is it's a part of the celebration of Social Work Month, celebrating our profession of social work and providing the students with an opportunity to have a reception around their particular profession. But also, we want to also use this reception time as a time when we can bring relevant events and issues to light to both the social work program, members of the social work program, and the Mount Versus community, as well as the larger Cedar Rapids community. So we thought it was very fitting this year to have a panel talk to us about what are the experiences of immigrants who are entering our communities and what are some of the services that are available to them. This is very fitting for social work and for Mount Mercy because those of you who are social work majors know that social work started working with Eastern European immigrants at the turn of the last century. So working with immigrants is very much a part of who we are. At the same time, Mount Mercy was started by the Sisters of Mercy, who also, in the United States, did much of their work working in immigrant services as well. So this is very fitting to have this activity. Just wanted to let you know, for any of you who may be wanting the single CEU that we have available for licensed social workers, just go ahead and sign up for that. I have a sign-up sheet, and then we'll make sure that we get that to you. Also, if you came for one of the signs, because we do have those awesome signs coming that you can put in your yard, I believe those will be coming later. Kathy McAuley Center will be providing those later. Okay, let's go ahead. I'd like to start our panelists by me introducing them, and then I'm going to turn the table over to them a little bit more to talk more about their services. But just for starters, let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. Rose, you may need to help me with your last name.
Mizose.
Mizose, okay. I was going to say Mizose, but I didn't know. Mizose is from Hawkeye Community Action Program. Monica Vallejo,
Yes.
okay, is from the Hispanic Program Specialist at Young Parents Network. Mallory Petesche, correct? Okay, is from the Youth Program at the Ethnic Minorities of Burma Advocacy and Resource Center. Joana is also joining us from Embark. They refer to themselves as Embark for short, Embark. And then we have Anne from the Catherine McAuley Center, the Education Program Specialist. And I believe Paula is going to be joining us later with us. So welcome, all of you. I have some questions that I'm going to go ahead and ask our panelists, and then we're going to also open it up as a time for question and answer if you have questions. So, okay, and we don't have to go in any particular order as far as who responds. If you need to use a mic, please feel free to do that. You don't have to. We're a pretty small room. Why don't we just start with you talking a little bit about what is your organization and what services do you provide? So whoever wants to start.
I will.
Okay, thanks, Rose.
Again, my name is Rose. I'm with the Hawkeye Area Community Action Program. We are a large agency, actually. We serve 6 counties at the moment. We have Linn County, Iowa County, Washington, Johnson, Jones. Did I miss one? Benton. I don't know if I missed another one. But currently our mission is to just serve the diverse populations and just help strengthen communities by providing them just skill-based programs that would help get them more self-sufficient and successful, really, at this point. So I'll be talking a little more as we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Monica from Young Parents Network. Our organization serves the mothers with kids the 0 to 5 years old. Our purposes for this education is we serve the prenatal program, and later we have the parenting program, and for Hispanic mothers it's the same. We have a prenatal program in Spanish and parenting program in Spanish too. We had a lot of volunteers, and we need volunteers bilingual, but our program is trying to help families to be successful in their lives with education about their kids, trying to be better fathers for the kids. And this is not only for women, this is for fathers too. We have the program for fathers in English every Thursday. And we have the fathers for Latinos is one Sunday a month. So we cover the whole family.
Okay, so I'm Ann Duggar. I'm the Education Program Manager at the Catherine McAuley Center Adult Basic Education Program, which gets really a bit of a mouthful. Our organization has actually 3 parts to it. We have a transitional housing program for women who are not living with their children, and that runs out of our upstairs part of our building, and we do have women who live there as well. We have our education program, which is what I am the manager of, and then we also have a reception and placement program that just started. Actually, we got our first refugees yesterday, so we're pretty hopping at the center right now. The education program specifically, we offer the majority of what we do is English as a second language to over 400 students. The majority of those are immigrants and refugees. We had 49 countries last year, so we were fairly well represented in the world. We also offer citizenship classes, math classes, computer skills, and conversation. And then as kind of part of wraparound services with reception and placement, we can help with job placement, any sort of forms to fill out, legal resources, free legal resources for immigration and naturalization. We have pretty much, if there's a question, we just tell our students and our the people that and our clients, hey, just send your family in, send us in, send your people in. We can try and find the best resources. Sometimes send people to Monica. So that's kind of comprehensive is what we're trying to achieve, just so we can answer as many questions as possible. So.
And I'm Joana from Embark. And Embark is located in Des Moines, Marshalltown, and Waterloo. In Waterloo, we have 3 main programs: mentoring, health, and youth program. My main focus is the youth program, which every Wednesday we have literacy program partner up with the UNI College. And we basically help the students or like the newcomer from refugee from Burma to come and learn how to read and talk about what they're reading, which help them build the reading levels.
For our health program, our program is called REACH, which we have actually employed members from the community who are community leaders that we're teaching them topics related to health. And then we're gearing them up for this summer. They're going to be doing what we call learning circles. So what we do at Embark is we teach members of the community valuable skills, and then we empower them to go out amongst their own community to teach those lessons in their native languages. We also do a lot of help with interpreting in our community. Embark was actually founded by the refugee community for the refugee community. We're the first refugee-led service provider in the state of Iowa. So our office, we're really lucky to have such a large staff and base of refugees working for us, so we're able to be very in touch with what our community needs. And for our mentoring program, we have 4 main focus areas. We help families with citizenship, job readiness, college readiness, and just basic English practice.
And I like to also add up, I know I was a little general with our program. We do have a very large agency filled with probably somewhere over 30 programs. Some of the programs are very, very known. The energy program, the light heat program, that helps the families with, just getting them gas, covering their gas. We also have the Head Start program that is actually probably one of the biggest programs in HACAP. And with refugees that are coming in or immigrants that are coming in, these are resources that are very helpful to them to help them move forward with, seeking job finding education in the meantime while they're being covered, their kids are being taken care of in our school program. We also have financial literacy program that assists, our refugees and immigrant families as well, just our general and low-income families, just helping them plan, financial, make financial budget planning, and just helping them understand, because when they're coming from, the foreign countries, this is a foreign country to them. When they're coming out here, they don't really understand ways things work, how financial, some of the families are coming here don't have the education to help them understand the financial planning to help them, be more self-sufficient financially. So this is a program that's very helpful to these families. We have weatherization program. I can't really talk about all of our programs, but we have a lot of programs that are very helpful to families, and weatherization is helping families with homes, furnace, and just cleaning work going on. Our program really, the focus is to not only just, to make these programs available to our families, but making them understand that these are skill-based programs to help them not only, use the program, but become more skillful so it can be more self-sufficient for them in the future, so they can be able to, figure them, get into the community themselves and use the resource.
Sure.
As a family support worker, that's my job for me to get, these families, the immigrant families, helping them integrate by providing them the resource that we already have, as well as resources from other agencies.
It sounds like there is definitely a theme of empowerment that I'm hearing coming from all of your programs.
Yeah. Yes, I don't explain too much about what my organization does it's not only for immigrants, it's for everybody, but the focus actually in our organization is education. And this is very important for Latinos families and for me, to bring to families and understand that the education is the more important thing in this country. And different countries, and I can say for my country, I'm from Ecuador, education is not an obligation, education is option. So, to trying to educate, and this is not only me, I think it's in Mexico too, and Guatemala, they are not as part of the government that everybody have to go to school, is something is optional, and this country is something that is not optional, is everybody have to go to the school, and this is what to trying to educate the parents. This is why we have different programs in our organization, like Lunch and Literacy. Lunch and Literacy is a program that we get together in different sizes. One for Latinos is in the library during the summertime for 30 minutes. We had lunch with the families and the kids, and we read books. They do with the volunteers from the city, bilingual volunteers. They come to read with the kids in summertime. We have ready-to-read programs. They do, the parents and kids come to read Wednesday night. It is the same volunteers and staff people go to Taylor and Hoover School. Hoover is the majority from Latinos, except Van Buren. Van Buren and Hoover is there are more population for Latinos. So for kids, now we have the program Juntos for Better Education. It's Together for Better Education for students that A grade ready to go to high school. What is this program is to 5 weeks, 5 times meetings with different volunteers. They come to teach the parents and the kids how to be prepared for high school, what they need to do, what classes they have to be get ready, and what is the community or what is the college can be offered to these students. So there's a lot of options to go to college, and this is what we're trying to present to the students. They can have already start working and mind to say this is the kind of college that I want to go, or this is where I'm going to planning to go, working for the scholarships, working for grants. Yeah, no waiting to 12th grade or 11th grade to start looking for college.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm starting to hear some countries mentioned: Burma, Guatemala, Mexico, Ecuador. I'm wondering what countries are represented in our community. I think that would be good for us just to know. And I know you probably can't list all 49, but
No.
but it would be interesting to know who is represented. In our
Mexico.
Mexico, the main.
Mexico and Guatemala.
Yeah, those are two of our main communities that are represented at the center. Mexico, Guatemala, Bhutan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Vietnam, and Burundi are all our main 6 that we have.
Yeah, we can relate to that. We also have Rwanda, Syria, Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are 3 that are very common.
When you look at the general migration patterns in Iowa, something really interesting is happening. Back in the past, it used to be there were really core groups migrating to our communities, but recently there's been a development in more micro communities of different cultures and diversity, which is why you're hearing all of these different countries that are represented, which there's a lot of different factors that go into why certain groups are here and why these patterns have changed. We can definitely talk about if there's time. The Burma community right now is the largest incoming refugee group in the entire country and also in the state of Iowa. There are over 7,000 refugees in Iowa. In our Waterloo area, there's about 2,500, but that by no means captures just how diverse Iowa is right now.
Could you go ahead and clarify for us the difference between refugee status and maybe another immigrant status that someone may have? Would you be comfortable doing that?
Yeah, so refugee status is something that is given to a family through the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees. So in order to gain refugee status, you basically have to go through a series of screening processes to prove that you have fled persecution from a country, which if any of you can name all of the different areas that are encompassed in that. So those who are refugees have that type of status and protection that said they had to flee for because of some kind of persecution, versus those who are immigrants just don't have that special status that's given from the UNHCR. Now, it is a huge misconception to assume that just because someone is an immigrant and not a refugee, that they did not flee the same types of violence that a lot of refugees had, because in many cases they did. It's just in order to get that refugee status, less than 1% of individuals who are displaced in our world actually end up getting to come to a country like the United States. Very few get that refugee status. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Good, thank you. Okay, and it sounds like we have a number of issues that are going to come up. Let's see if we can continue to pull those out. What are some of the challenges that you see immigrants facing as they come to Iowa, as they come to this community, as well as what do you see as the strengths that they bring with them that allow them to manage those challenges?
I would say language is a big challenge. There's lots of language barriers. Of course, they come out here. It's a foreign country that speaks the language that's totally different from what they're used to. So they have to. That makes them feel that they have to start at the bottom, because they have to start taking ESL classes before they can start. Even getting closer to resources that they need. Language is one. Also, healthcare. When immigrants are coming here, not as refugees, it's more difficult for them to get, to connect to healthcare. Medicaid is not available to them until they have their citizenship status, or they're here for 5 years for their green card. Oh, or wait a minute.
3 years. 3 years for they are married with American citizen, and 5 years if they are resident. Start with the resident.
Residents. There you go. So after 5 years, so during those time, they have to depend in free clinics. if there's any around that, you know.
If they are resident, I'm sorry, if they are resident and then working in a place, they offer medical insurance, they can have their own insurance. But before, it's not any help with any kind of offer medical in the city. And I think it's in the whole Iowa and United States.
So just depending on, you know, if there is such thing as the free clinics that would accept them. So it's very difficult when you're here as an immigrant. Also, funding FIP that refugees can get, immigrants don't really get that. That same advantage to getting FIP just as a start.
So everybody understand that FIP is Family Investment Program. It provides a monthly cash benefit
Yeah.
to low-income families.
Which is still limited even for refugees, but at least they have the advantage to start off with that. But immigrants, it's different for them. So these are all barriers. These are things that, you know, kind of limits their, you know, their incomes and all that stuff. So now they have to look for families, for friends, people who, you know, who are already here settled to help them integrate.
So it sounds like the community is a real strength,
Yes.
and they can help the incoming individual not assimilate, but come into the community and find resources that aren't otherwise available
Definitely,
to them.
and these are resources that they would get either by, you know, going to these free clinics. That's where they're going to refer them to, let's say, HACAP, and then HACAP would, you know, get them family support, or, you know, get them connected with the program that would help them, or go to, you know, other agencies that would just from there on. It's just really if this person can help you, but other than that, it's a struggle getting to where you need to be.
I think the big struggle, I think, in the community for immigrants is mental health, from the parents and from the kids.
And I see a lot of people shaking their heads up and down.
Especially for immigrants, I can speak about the Hispanic. To move to different country when everything is different, for young people, it's very shocked to leave the culture to start adopting other culture when they don't feeling like they fit in United States. So what we can do is trying to find some mental health. We don't have bilingual people they can help the youth. We don't have in Cedar Rapids. We had one. They can help with one person is not enough for Hispanic community. So I think this is the big issue in Cedar Rapids for parents and for the kids and for youth especially.
And many of our families, I'm sorry,
Oh, that's okay.
for mental health, and first of all, you have to be able to understand in your own culture and background to be able to communicate what's happening to you. And we see mental health as a huge issue in our refugee community. One anecdote I give sometimes to help individuals understand is we had a family that went to a doctor who kept telling their doctor that their heart hurt. Actually had a CAT scan done. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with this person, but it turned out that they had mental health problems. But in Burma, there isn't a language or words for mental health. That isn't something that families talk about. So one, you have to have the right language and the right interpreter, which are actually over 135 languages and dialects spoken in Burma. Most doctors think everyone speaks Burmese. Very often, doctors don't comply with the law and provide an interpreter and make families bring their own interpreter, or kids are pulled out of school to provide interpretation services. Or an interpreter comes in that doesn't even speak the right language. So first you have to get past that barrier, and then you have to be able to communicate what is going on in a way that is culturally competent for both parties involved. So there are many, many barriers just to getting mental health care and normal health care for families, not to mention financial.
That's kind of where I was headed, just in terms of the cultural barrier and the cultural differences are so big. And I'm thinking about just a couple of things that have happened at the center. in the last couple of months, where we took a group to Unity Point to do some job shadowing, and one of the things that came out of that was one of the students wasn't looking at the people when they were interviewing, and sort of kind of wasn't smiling a lot, and for him that was pretty normal for his country, and they said, we don't really want him, and they went back, our resettlement department kind of went back and talked to them about this and talked to him, and it turns out he was like, I didn't know I was supposed to smile. That's not, we wouldn't ever have done that in my country. And speaking about mental health issues across a lot of the countries that we serve, there's no language for that. It's not something, you can get into some gender specific issues with mental health and what that means to men and what it means to women. Mental health issues also really, if you're looking at refugees coming from war-torn countries, there are definitely some post-traumatic stress that happens, those sorts of things, and people just don't know how to talk to them. And one of the things that I know we've talked about in our immigrant concerns meetings that's come up over and over again is that PTSD it looks like schizophrenia a lot of the time, but people don't know how to talk about it. So across the board, cultural differences with language, with health, with jobs, it just becomes pretty big, and to not be met, halfway to say, hey, this might actually be a problem, or can we communicate a little bit better about this, is a problem for our students and families.
And with that, it's very easy to get bogged down in all of the challenges, but I always want to touch on the strengths. In Iowa right now, we have a job shortage. We have too many jobs and not enough people to fill those jobs. That's why the program that Joana and I work for, when it comes down to it, we are working to help empower a workforce to fill those jobs. Every family that we talk to, whenever I ask parents how they have the strength to keep going, because everyone that we work with is a survivor and have had to overcome so much to come here, they always tell me that they do it for their children. Communities support each other so much and are so hardworking. Parents will work the second shift, they'll go to English class all day, they'll transport each other to appointments. And these are some of the most hardworking, dedicated individuals that I've ever met in my life. And I think it's always really important to remember how important that diversity is to our Iowan communities, and that we need immigrants here.
Yeah. So piggyback on in a mental health issue, being someone who can speak to some of the Swahili and Kirundi and French refugees, when you're looking at culture, it's definitely it's hard for some of these families because one, it's not in their language to express what they're going through. Two, they're not, even if they knew what it was, opening up about it is another case, because for them it's a shame. In their country, it's looked at as shame. So they think this is something that follows them wherever they go. So they try not to talk about it because it's not acceptable in their culture. Now that's where we come in to educate them, letting them know that you can actually get help and it's not a bad thing. So it's just wanted to add up to that there is also that shame that's sometimes associated with not wanting to look for.
So really speaking for those people who are working with the immigrant population, how important it is to be sensitive to that, to be sensitive to the fact there may not even be language for this, and even if there is a way of communicating it, there may be a felt need not to communicate it due to some sense of shame, so helping them understand it's okay.
I would say one of the newer approaches to addressing mental health is art therapy. That has been found to be very effective because it's a way that doesn't seem like it's being mental health counseling or therapy. It's expressing their experiences and their feelings through art. And so there's been a lot of support for that, and there's actually a lot of more of a trend towards that as a really effective tool.
Neat. We had a couple of people talk about strengths that make it possible for immigrants to keep going. Wondered if anyone wanted to add anything to that?
I would also just say the strength of the community. So the huge support network that exists within their own communities is pretty impressive. And I think also in American culture, we're taught kind of all for one for all, more of the independent. You know, you were taught to take care of yourself first and foremost. And in a lot of other cultures, the community and the family is first and foremost. So I think that people really will sacrifice their own personal needs to benefit the good of the whole. And so, whereas it might look to us like that is not a strength and through our American lens, for them, that really is a source of strength for them.
I would like to just share the story in terms of like the strength of not only kind of country communities, but the community of immigrants and refugees in Cedar Rapids as a whole. I was teaching a citizenship class last fall, and I had a lawyer come in to talk about filling out the naturalization papers, and she just wanted to know what our students thought about the safety pins back in the fall when that was really a big deal. And they were all like, "What are you talking about? Like, that's what is that?" And we explained it, and she said, "You know, do you think it's kind of a silly thing? You know, that sort of thing." And we had people from Honduras and Liberia and Congo, and we had just a really kind of big range of at least 10 countries there. And each person, once it was explained and what it was for, said, "Well, I want to wear the safety pin because I want to make sure everybody from other countries knows that I'm a safe place to be and that they can talk to me." Especially, we talk a lot about the grocery store. Like, this is a place where a lot of people have problems in terms of not being understood, and just the strength of the actual, like, all of the country communities and what they're willing to support and who they're willing to support has been really impressive. And we have kind of a good, just because we have so many countries come through our doors, that happens a lot within just our little reception area, even just people talking to each other and being really welcoming and helping each other. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is something I can see in my participants in my program. So they led families in their country. When they come to the United States, people, the neighbor, they adopt like a family. And in my program, the friends, the people they from Mexico, and they know people from Guatemala, from Honduras. They are very close and look each other and help each other. Not too long ago, we have a little girl that have leukemia, and they don't know. When they told me one day, I don't know what happened. No, I went to visit to the house, and I asked what happened with Diana. She had a big purple in the legs. I don't know what happened. I think they have in the program because we have childcare. And the next day, she started Head Start. And the next day, they call me and say, "You have to come to see my daughter. She had the face purple." And something happened, they had an accident. Now that she woke up and I can see the face purple. So I said, "It's nothing to wait. We have to go to the hospital." The leg was purple, the face was purple. So we get to the hospital, and as soon as they see an emergency room, they send us to Iowa City because the start gets tests and tests and tests, and they told us that she had leukemia. So it was, for me, personal, I think it was a terrible sickness. So my heart was broke. And I told the mom, and the mom is so religious, so with a lot of faith, and he said, "Everything is going to be okay. I know God sent me this, and I'm going to be okay." So as soon as I come back to Cedar Rapids, and I told what the other people, they are part of the group, everybody trying to help. They know they need to go to Iowa City every day or stay in Iowa City. I think it was almost a year that she stayed in Iowa City. They have 2 little kids. So I can see in my community, everybody start work together. We put some announcement on Facebook because I had Facebook for Latinos in Cedar Rapids. As soon as I put that people start donate money for gas, they offer people for child care, they offer people from groceries, other people offered to make meals. So there was a wonderful seeing everybody was Hispanic families. Hispanic families, they don't have too much to give, but they are community and they help. So I can see wherever they go, they are never alone. Even they leave the countries, we adopt families in this country. So I'm 20 years that I live in the United States, and I had my friends. Then I told my kids grow up to say, and they are my friends from Puerto Rico, from Panama, from Mexico, from Guatemala. They are my very good friends. They are my sisters because they are part of my life in the United States. My kids grow up to see my friends in my house, so they are my family. They're from other countries. They are my family. And this is what we see in the United States. This is what we see in Cedar Rapids, how the families help together.
Very important to know. And I'm thinking about the social workers in the audience to remember that when we're talking with people to understand that for them, their community is family, and to respect it as that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you've touched on some of this already, but I'll ask the question, and if you have something to add, please do. What, if anything, can be an obstacle to providing services to immigrants?
It's a big.
Well, funding is
Okay.
one thing.
Should we start making a list on the board? Yeah.
And another in applications for help for receive service in different organizations, they have to take away social security number. Because with this is completely denial to people that are legal status pending or legal status, they don't have legal status. But they are here, they work here, and they pay taxes like everybody else. Because they work here, they pay tax. So they had obligations, but they don't have the rights.
Okay, well put.
I think the obstacle is like our basic daily, it's part of our daily life, like for example, the transportation. Since they came to the United States and came here, they don't know, since they don't know English or can't read or write in English, they can't get their permits, which means they can't go to access to the resource, which sometimes could be English classes where they're going to miss the class. And sometimes it is hard for them to just go to grocery store, go to places, wherever. And I think that's a big part of the obstacle. And the community is so wide and diverse that the embark sometimes can't really get the transportation or gather everyone around in the community to have a meeting or to have activities. So that's really a big obstacle.
Yeah, because, we don't have the capacity to go pick up everyone to bring them to our classes, and we do the best we can to go out into the community and to have lessons at people's homes. But another big thing is just the capacity of nonprofits in Iowa. We touched on funding a little bit. We're really feeling that. This Friday, there's a bill in the legislature that's going to cut our funding massively. And I know every nonprofit is really feeling that right now, and having the capacity to serve all of these individuals with all of these unique needs and to empower them to be part of our community and to live successful lives seems to be becoming harder and harder.
I do want to support that. Transportation is definitely a big obstacle for some families. We have, within our program, again, we have lots of programs that we have parent education programs that we want our families to go to, because in our early Head Start, we want them to, what we're teaching, because we have a home base There you go. We have a home-based program that these families are either not working or, you know, only have one family working or one parent working. So we're trying to get them out of their home so that they can also, you know, be exposed to other community, either events or, you know, skill-based programs out there. But getting them out of their home can sometimes be very hard. One, transportation. Our program, because of liability issues, we can't take them, put them in our cars and bring them there, even though we would love to. But so not only, you know, saying that they don't have, you know, the language to, you know, go ahead and learn to, you know, to read the driving permit or getting their license. So their home, depending on one person, either the working father or adult that's in the house. And so it's really hard to just get them to connect to resources that we think they need due to transportation. So that's one.
And it sounds like transportation is a huge issue,
Yeah.
but it feels like there's something underlying that as well, and that is the inability to utilize even the forms. And so I just wanted to ask, I know at one point, about a decade ago, there was a real push to make Iowa an English-only state. And so official forms, government forms, could only be written in English. And could you clarify for us, where are we as a state in regard to that? Do we have our forms in other languages, or are we still an English-only state?
Well, when you think about the number of languages that we've touched on today, it would be almost impossible to do forms in all of those different languages. It used to be, boy, if you'd have Spanish and English, you're doing pretty good, and then you start adding a few more languages, that's good, but then, you know, there's always going to be people who are left out of that. So I think it's really that support to be able to sit with somebody and help them to understand, and the interpretation is huge. And I know for a lot of nonprofit agencies, we have access to interpreters, but at a cost. And so that ability to access free interpretation is really limiting our ability to provide those services as effectively in order to be able to fill out those forms. Now, there are some services that are required, you know, like healthcare, different federal programs that are required to provide interpretation in order to complete certain forms. But I think Iowa I don't think that's an issue anymore.
But it's not only they find the forms in different language. It's not too much the case. The case is the immigrants, some immigrants, they don't know how to read in their own language. They don't know how to write in their own language. So even they have in their own language, the application is not going to be helpful. So, and for, I can count the place they have. Do you want to do a complaint for civil rights commission have a different language complaints. So that's good, because in the city, we have the civil rights is wonderful. The other place they have in different language, I don't see any place else. So I hope we can have something different. I know because I do Hispanic programs, so some places they have Hispanic forms, but the other language like Burundi or Swahili, they start working. I know there's some people that are working. The school system, they're working. They work for the health program, even in the website from the school, they have in French right now and Spanish. So it takes a lot of time, but I think, and I'm feeling that we're going to get the time in some day different language.
We just have too many languages we have to think about. Maybe looking at the major languages like Swahili, French, Spanish, those would be a good start.
I think this is Swahili
because
and
most of the
Spanish
families that we're getting coming from Africa, the African continent, like Burundi families, most of them speak Swahili. Coming in Congo also, most of them speak Swahili or French. So Swahili is one that's very common for most of these families that are coming from different countries. So just, adding French, which would, cover a big population. Swahili will cover another big population. Hispanic would cover a big population. So those would be really core languages to be looking at going forward. I did see a lot of French. Our organization does a lot of Spanish translating. I'm hoping to see more of the other languages as we go forward. So,
but it's so much more than just having a form translated. Even if you have a family that can read a form, if it's a concept that they're not aware of, for example, if you have someone who has a doctor's appointment, most of our families, they lived in refugee camps for 20 to 30 years. There was no modern medicine like we know here. They are able to find transportation and make it to their doctor's appointment. They happen to be able to read. But they never before have had to check in for an appointment. I've talked to families who've sat in the waiting room for 5, 10, longer until someone might come talk to them or they go home because they don't understand how just a basic appointment works. Or maybe someone sends you home a letter talking about needing to have a dentist appointment for your child and you're lucky enough that it's in the right language, but there was no dental care in your country, or you don't have a way to get to that address. So even if you're lucky enough, and also just getting the forms out to everyone, that's a huge, one, for us, all of our agencies always just being able to inform everyone that a service is being provided, that an event is happening, getting those forms out to all the families, that in itself is a huge challenge. So don't think that just because you translate a form into every language, which you definitely can't, and most of our families are also pre-literate, so they probably won't be able to read it, it's additionally just understanding the culture and the systems to be able to read and understand what's on that form.
So once again, really speaking to the importance of your services in helping them understand what those cultural things are.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, speaking of systems, I think access to employment is a big challenge in that anymore so much employment happens online. So employment applications online. So not only are they not literate, but they aren't computer literate. So that's a huge barrier. Not a lot of people even understand what a resume is, let alone have one. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of having proof that you actually have a high school diploma if you do, and or any other certifications often is lost and don't come with them when they come to the U.S. And so being able to prove that you have a certain skill level, and so really working with employers, one, to give them an opportunity to work, but two, to understand why they may not have this documentation and some of the challenges they're going to have in going through a traditional employment situation. And if they even are interested in them after we help them fill out the application and they want to call them for an interview or to talk to them, then that's another barrier right there because they may not have the English to be able to have that phone conversation. And so we're trying to help overcome those barriers and to help the employers understand what those barriers are and to work with us in helping to overcome them because they are huge, as you were mentioning, a huge asset to our workforce, and they want to work and they're willing to work very hard.
Which, just to touch on employment real fast, so one of the reasons why there are so many immigrants in Iowa is because of our meat packing plants. If I were to pull up a map right here and show you all the data of where immigrants and refugees are living in Iowa, you're going to see that they're concentrated on areas that have a meat packing plant. Like here in Waterloo, we have Tyson. So Tyson will actually send chaplains out into the community and they will recruit people to come work at the meat packing plant, which meat packing plant, it's hard labor, lots of injuries, long hours. And what happens is because there are these meat packing plants, which oftentimes this is the only labor that people can do because they don't care if you don't speak English. and they'll work with families and they'll ask you to come. And families, what they'll do is, because of other states that don't have such an agriculturally inclined workforce, is they will tell their friends, like, there's work here, come here, like, you can have a job. It's not a great job, but the meatpacking plants, they're always needing more people, because like we talked about, there's that labor shortage which extends far past meatpacking plants. We're trying to get a lot of our families to broaden our horizons past that. In the Burma community, there's actually recently a study put out that our youth nationwide have the highest dropout rate. And why that's happening is because families, their children, they're not having their horizons broadened beyond Tyson. So like, well, I can drop out now and start helping my families and working. So just so you know, living in Iowa, our meatpacking plants and the history and why they're here, as long as they're meatpacking plants, we are going to continue to see a growth in immigrants and refugees who live here.
I want to add education as well. I think we're focusing on the population of immigrants and refugees who are coming out here with probably, very low education skills. But we also have, we've been serving some of the families that are coming here, then they have their bachelor's degree from back home. They have all that skill, but when they come here, it's not accepted, so they have to restart over. So not only, they may have to, start with ESL. Some of them do have some English where they can start taking, probably college courses, but that's starting at the beginning. So they're going to end up at Tyson, for instance, where, because they can't get another job. They can get a job to, their education level. So they're either going to end up there, and once they start working, they have to provide to their family. So that's a portion of your life that you're putting aside so that you can focus on just providing.
And I was thinking of what that would be like to know you have a college education,
Yeah.
or even higher. I've heard of even higher. And then you come to another country where it's not recognized, and you're not recognized as a person who might have a college education. What a hit that is to that sense of who you are.
It is a setback for a lot of those families.
I think he had a question.
Even your self-esteem is go down.
I want to ask one more question, and then let's open it up. So let's ask one more question, and let's open it up here. I was just curious about how your agency is responding to the current policy changes through the executive orders that have been attempted, as well as the crackdown and increase in deportations. You were a bit aggressive about deportations. Just wanted to touch on that.
Our agency has been operating as usual. We haven't been, as we get informed about what's happening, we try to talk to families, but there has not been any changes. We've been operating as usual. We're still accepting applications, towards programs, and we're still referring families to our programs just as usual, so we don't have much going on as far as changes.
My organization is the same. We don't have nothing in application for be part of our program. They don't have social security number, so this is allowed to serve everybody. But because I worked in the community for many years and I had experience to work in different fields, I have a lot of people. They know me and they know that I can help anyway. So what I do is to trying to help families to be prepared, like with help with the passports with the kids, double citizenship, translate birth certificates, call to the embassy and trying to make appointments, trying to do whatever they need to do to the families to have double citizenship. The kids have double citizenship. What they need to do is because the parents was deported, or the parents decide to back to the countries. This is happening with a lot of families that I know in Cedar Rapids. They are decide to come back to Mexico, or they're going to come back to Guatemala pretty soon, because they don't want to leave the prisons, and anytime they got me and they're going to deport me. And I don't want to live like that, because I'm thinking in the future I can come back, whether my son going to college or when my son graduate from high school, they can come back. So, and there's a lot of need for passports. There's a lot of need for IDs. And so what we do is, I say we do because they always, Young Parents Network support me in every single program for Latinos. So I get in contact with the Mexico Consul, and they come in the April 29th to Cedar Rapids to help families in Cedar Rapids and around Cedar Rapids area. So they have 200 appointments, so they can do passports and IDs and birth certificates for kids. They need a double citizenship. And we're trying to connect to different lawyers in town and lawyers in Des Moines, because I'm part of the Latino Affairs programs, and I'm connect with different programs in Des Moines. So we're trying to do some connection with lawyers. They are free. And Catholic Charities is a wonderful program. They help us, and Justice for Neighbor in the city. So this is what my organization support me to do in Cedar Rapids. Okay. And it's something that I want to mention, is about jobs. Let me tell you something that we do. I had one mother, they need to work, but they cannot work in the morning, so we find a place they work in the night time. I help with the application. It was in English. We help with the application. We had the interview. I went to translate. She do the drug test and the physical test. I went with her. She got to other interview to explain what kind of job she is going to do. And this kind of, the meeting was not 30 minutes, not 1 hour, it was 2 hours, 3 hours. So in the time, I say, oh, she's accepting, you can start Monday. She called me 30 minutes before she started and say, I think that I cannot do that. But why? He said, they asked me for 1 day, but the persons over there, I'm feeling I was not welcome. There was 99% American and African American, and she feeling that she don't fit over there. So what we do is, not even the companies want to hire people, the diversity, the co-workers, the one they don't welcome to everybody. So it's not only the CCOs or the owner or the manager they want to have, as all the people that work over there have to have some kind of education to welcome immigrants.
Paula, what do you go to?
Just what we've encountered well, since the policy changes, specifically the executive orders that have come out about traveling and refugees coming in, we've just had we've had a lot of people. This has happened more than once, where students will come up and there is a general sense of resignation that this has happened before. This will continue to happen to us. Whatever. I mean, this is just how this goes. So we've had that happen. We've had, I had a couple of students come and say, I guess my children can stay here, but I don't know what will happen to me. They're refugees. They have permanent status here. They're legal here. And they are still very concerned just about how will my family, how will my kids be taken care of, because clearly I'm not welcome here. I actually had a personal friend from Iran say he's been here since he was 13. He's got many degrees, master's degrees, and he said, I just feel like a second-class citizen now. I've done everything I was supposed to do, and this is how it feels. A lot of our students from Mexico and Guatemala specifically, when we call and say, is this so-and-so, they will not answer until you tell them who you are. So this, it just makes me, my voice is shaking, because it is so, I just think, who's going to come and explain this? We are explaining this, people who are absolutely welcoming and really want to be safe places. And I, every time this happens, I think, come explain it to them. This is happening all the time.
These are real people.
All we can say is that we are welcoming and safe,
Yes.
but we don't necessarily know. I think that's the fear piece. People are afraid. And there's even a sense of fear, I think, in terms of what could happen, in terms of, the government coming in to our agency. There's so much that we used to never even consider would be an option. And just the whole acceptability of spewing hate and racism and xenophobia, it's really amazing.
This is
we
very
don't,
hard for us too.
we don't know, I'm a white woman, I can walk down the street and nobody thinks anything.
So this is the problem, colors. The problem is the color.
Yeah, it's so far beyond the executive
You
order.
black, you white, you brown. So we have the same problems in our community, and it was for me to trying to say everything is okay, don't worry. There's big problems in the big cities. We are welcome state. In this city is nothing happened. So like I told you guys, I had a Facebook for moms Latinos in Cedar Rapids. So I saw one video that one person in Des Moines or in close to Cedar Rapids, North Liberty. They say, oh, we are here, they want to announce it. In Cedar Rapids, they got 2 people in jail, they asked for documentation. And everybody called me, oh, do you know is something's gonna, no, don't worry, everything is okay. Everything is okay. So in my mind, I said, the real, everything is okay? So what I did is contact the police department, talk with the sheriff, say, okay, what is going on in Cedar Rapids? But first, I went to jail. The people who was in jail, I know the families, and I asked, what happened? What did they get you? They ask you for your driver license. You don't have driver license, they can give you a ticket. Do you have insurance? No, so you have another ticket. Do you have an ID? No, so they can happen to you, they can happen to me, they can happen white or brown or black, anybody. If you commit something, they stop you.
So there are many things that make them vulnerable.
Yeah, so the happened was he was drunk driving. So they take for drunk driving, everybody can go for drunk driving. And they drink and they got you, it's okay. It's not okay, but that's normal, this is the law. So it's nothing to do with immigration. It's nothing to do with immigration. So I went to the court, and the court, they told whatever they need to tell, and you can go. So I was with the family and waiting for him, 1 hour, 2 hours, and I said, what happened? I said, oh, sorry, Monica, immigration come and got it. I said, what? So I went to immigration, and I said, the law say in 48 hours, you don't give us the time to talk to the lawyer. And I said, oh no, Monica, you're wrong. The law say during 48 hours. So they can be in 20 minutes, I'll be there. Or they can, I said, oh my gosh, so you don't give the time. So this happened, and I told families, everything is okay, don't worry. This is not in Cedar Rapids, this is not, and later the news, it's in Des Moines, but it's not in Cedar Rapids, So I have to count people because they have news for different cities, and they're afraid of everything.
Very much.
They don't want to go even for grocery shopping.
Right. I just want to make sure that,
just one thing before you all leave, it would be really helpful to our agency if on like a sheet of paper,
what can we do?
just
take us
putting
that
your
direction.
name and what you learned from this presentation. It's really important for us to be able to prove that these kinds of things are important for us to be doing with our time. So if you could do that before you leave. And then also to touch on what our agency has done, and it was mentioned a little bit, a lot of the burden of educating people about what is going on has fallen onto our agencies. I remember when the first ban came around, I walked into my classroom of high school students and they were all really scared and nervous. They didn't understand what was happening. They kind of heard on the news, they kind of heard on Facebook, and so we had a conversation. And that ban had halted the refugee resettlement program. And one of my high school students, a young boy, his sister, which right now applications for refugee resettlements are backlogged up to 10 years. So families who are petitioning for loved ones to come here, who are in grave danger, can wait up to 10 years, and it can be longer for some families. So this family had waited many years. His sister was supposed to come in 3 months, was told that she's no longer going to be able to come. And that burden that falls onto us to tell people this news. And that's a thing that we're constantly doing, is educating people about what's happening and what's their rights, and doing everything we can to just support them.
Not the rights.
Yes, and I would say too, with regard to the rights, I know Catholic Charities has been through many communities doing a Know Your Rights workshop for folks, and that's been very helpful. But I think as agencies, we are trying to share as much information as possible. I know we invested a lot of time trying to put things on our website that would help educate not just our clients, but our public. Because we have a volunteer base of about 600 people in a year. So we feel if we can help bring awareness and education to our volunteer base by just providing some resources on our website that we've done our vetting and made sure that they're reliable sources, that is an opportunity for us. And honestly, just being able to offer volunteer opportunities in our agencies, I think, is so critical, because once somebody comes and has a personal experience with an immigrant or refugee, you will always have a different perspective than you had before that. There are so many people whose minds are just so opened once they have that personal relationship or that experience working with these communities or these individuals, that they see them as people and they recognize them as human and with needs.
So that could be a call for volunteers also.
Call for volunteers.
Volunteer. One of
Our
the things
program
we could
too.
do.
Yes, all
We need
programs.
volunteers.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, did everybody hear what Mallory was asking for, and speaking to the fact that it would be so helpful for them if you could just take a couple of minutes to write just a couple of sentences?
Yeah, just a couple of sentences.
2 sheets.
No, we'll keep it nice, no papers, just your name and something that you learned, something that was new or a takeaway, just something that you gained from this talk would be really helpful to us.
So why don't we go ahead and open it up to the audience, open up questions to the audience. Anyone else who had one?
Yes, someone talked about the unpredictability of the reaction refugees and the population families get from community. So it can be positive or negative. In terms of housing provision for refugees, specifically refugee families, is there a tendency to cluster them in certain parts of the city or community, which will basically increase the tendency for the rest of the community to look at that part of the community as kind of refugee cluster or refugee neighborhood? Or is there a tendency to scatter them around so that they are integrated in the city?
So are you referring to like where families are placed or where they move themselves to?
I mean, whether we set up,
Okay.
basically there is a provision for housing or finding housing. How does it work?
Well, so you're from Waterloo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Cedar Rapids, I would say that there does tend to be a cluster, especially in the Westdale neighborhood. And one of the reasons for that is because it's affordable and it's accessible. We have a huge need for affordable housing in our community. And somebody who's not going to discriminate, we try to make sure people understand their rights. Civil Rights Commission is great with that. However, people don't always know their rights. So we have to have more landlords who are willing to open up their housing to immigrants and refugees. So the reason they tend to be clustered, I think they definitely are spread throughout the community, but there definitely are larger clusters in Cedar Rapids because of that. So if we can create more affordable housing throughout the community, we will not see that clustering.
I'm part of the program Joana. Joana is a neighborhood association, and this is from Southwest Side. So we had a program for for African Americans and from Latinos, because actually this is the area with more African people are immigrants and Latino population. So we always trying to bring both groups together, and we had a program for make your own garden. So I'm learning from the African families, and it's so wonderful for me to learn another culture, to share, if I can see my Hispanic families teaching the African families how to trying to do the gardens. So I think this is a wonderful mix, African and Latinos, because they are supporting each other.
And it just,
She wanted to add.
Yeah, when you're talking about migration, there are really two
Yeah,
separate
it's just-
kinds. So you have your primary resettlement. So that is the location that people go to when they first get here to the United States. And then you have secondary migration, which that is where individuals move to. In Iowa, like I talked about those meatpacking plants and those jobs, the highest number of people who are coming here are secondary migrants. So for your primary resettlement location, that's where the resettlement agency will set up the home for you to come, which again is going to be where there is affordable housing, because stipends for new refugees, I mean, they're nothing that large. And another academic term, just because I know we're at a college, is also you can always look into ethnic enclaves. So ethnic enclaves, that's the term that refers to when you have like a large community that consists of people from like the same ethnic backgrounds living there, which that's a whole nother thing. But if you're interested, something of your own that you can explore and learn more about. So with that secondary migration, though, is you're going to have families who are moving to meet with other families or friends here, and they're going to naturally want to live closer to each other. So that's how you also get those smaller networks of where you have mostly refugees all from the same country living in the same apartment complex, which would have had to be affordable in the first place for families to be able to live there.
And if you're looking at Cedar Rapids, the number of primary refugees in Cedar Rapids is very small. I would say the percentage is very small compared to secondary migrants.
Yeah. We're 5th in the country right now for the intake of secondary migration, which also with that secondary migration numbers are extremely difficult to track because there's no formal system, right? With primary resettlement, we know exactly who's coming here. Like there's grants, there's databases, there's organizations. But when a family moves, they don't report to the government, hey, I'm moving to this state. So we rely a lot on census data, we rely on data from different nonprofits, we rely heavily on knowing from the what public health says. But overall in Iowa with our meatpacking plants, that secondary migration, I just want you all to know that number is going to keep getting bigger.
Yes, and people come here because it's a low cost of living, good job opportunities, and in general, it's a very welcoming community. We're very supportive, and we have really awesome resources. So as much as we talk about the challenges, I think as a community, as Eastern Iowa, we have some amazing resources that people can access for that support.
Is there another question? No questions from anyone? Quiet group.
We don't bite, I promise. We're pretty friendly.
Oh, one in the back, actually two.
Perhaps I missed it, but Catholic Charities has a federal contract to resettle refugees. I wonder if any of your programs are affected or supported by federal contracts that might be in jeopardy given the attitudes of the new administration.
We also are a refugee resettlement agency as well. So ESL has been one of our primary programs, but we're newer in the resettlement world. So yes, we definitely, our numbers have been cut in half. I'm guessing Embark has been cut as well.
So for our organization, Embark itself, we are not a resettlement organization, but we have our Refugee Rise AmeriCorps program, which is a program that's funded through both federal and state funds, which we are at risk on both of those fronts. And through that, we actually place different members, so people to work at nonprofits all throughout. Like Howland Charities, all throughout different agencies. So we are seeing, that's okay. But we're seeing all of our different agencies that we work with are being affected by this. It's hitting everyone at both the federal level, at the state level, and even at times at the local level, as far as being able to keep these programs alive.
We don't have a refugee resettlement program, but we do get a lot of our referrals, or refugee referrals from Catholic Charities, which does, of course, in the long run will affect us as well, as, you know, if their funds are being cut as far as, you know, their refugee, you know, in their refugee resettlement, it's definitely going to affect us, because Catholic Charities are depending in organizations such as ours to get these refugees connected to other resources, because they only have such an amount of time to keep the refugees before letting them integrate in the community. They have probably about 3 months of these refugees when they come in, and then hoping they're going to get them connected to, you know, programs that would help them, you know, further their resources. So of course, if they get affected, it's definitely going to have an impact on our organization as far as receiving these refugees to help them.
And Rose, I'm so glad that you mentioned what a limited amount of time they have.
They do.
To get them resettled.
It's
I always
certain
like
funding.
3 years.
Yeah,
They
so
have
it is
certain
actually-
funds.
Yeah, it's
By
actually-
the time that fund is done, it could be probably 3 months, it could be a little more, but
No,
It's
usually
usually
like
it's actually 90 days. It is
So-
exactly 90 days or less if you get
Yeah.
all of your core services met. So there are very, very, very specific core services that have to be provided to a newly resettled refugee. And you are required to, we don't necessarily hope we can get them connected, we have to. There's additional resources we can if needed, but we are, as a resettlement agency, required to make sure that by certain dates, like within the first day, within the first 5 days, first 7 days, first 30 days, that there are certain services provided to them. And then at the 90th day, that case is closed. And then that's where we really rely on the wraparound services, and agencies like Catholic Charities aren't just going to drop the family. Of course, if they need additional support, they will do what they can, but they don't have the capacity to do that. And so at Catherine McAuley Center, we're trying to create those wraparound services so that at that 90th day, it's pretty seamless. Like, they don't feel that they've been dropped or that the case is closed. Good luck.
And I know that when I first started this work, all of these different terms that we're talking about can be really confusing. And so just to kind of break it down a little bit, when we talk about contracted through the federal government and all of these different rules, so it's not the federal government themselves that's actually like taking people and putting them here in Cedar Rapids. They have grants that agencies can apply for, and there are actually 7 main resettlement agencies, and then there are micro agencies within that. So Catholic Charities is part of a broader network of an organization that has received grant funding to help resettle people to the U.S. And through the federal agency that set up these grants, they've set up certain rules and restrictions that everyone must follow. And so even though, because those 90 days, that's not nearly enough time. That's like Embark, we exist to help bridge the gap after those 90 days to full self-sufficiency. But the funding for, like, there's a misconception that refugees get to kind of government handouts while they're here. The amount of time that a refugee gets support, it's very brief. And after those 90 days, it's over. And a lot of times, before the 90 days, it stops as far as funding support. And also, we talked about that secondary migration. If a family moves during those first 90 days, they lose their caseworker, which is very common for people who live in other states, because that funding is going to stop soon, or it might stop during those 90 days. It depends on how the organization doles it out. And if you don't have a job, you have to move. And so a lot of families will move here even during their 90 days, and they don't even get that much support.
Stephanie, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity. Here's Stephanie's question. No? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
I wonder if temporary housing is maybe an issue. And I wonder if you're acquainted with the program that several churches are involved in with homeless people to provide temporary housing for them while they're awaiting permanent housing.
Are you referring to Family Promise?
Yeah.
We're aware of it, but we don't access it.
So Martha.
Yeah.
So we've seen a fairly good combo, but we were able to. They were always already connected, and so with all their things that they had to do when they were applying for stuff, we had to hire them back stuff all the way to doing that. But they also got involved in affordable housing, and they were able to get their family into housing. They came from the combo via the East Coast, Baltimore, Maryland. So they were able to do that. They were able to get jobs, they speak French. So they were able to get jobs and everything. So that was a really big thing. Sometimes there's a struggle with that. And I guess one of my questions is it doesn't always work out in a homeless shelter. Because now we go back to language barrier. Because like the young lady said, you have French, you've got Swahili, then you've got a form of French inside French. So it changes up a lot like any other foreign language culture. But sometimes it does work out in a homeless family. We've had people from Nigeria. We have a gentleman from Nigeria in our shoulder being on the East Coast. So he's working. So I don't know for sure what's going to happen under the immigration stuff because I don't know what that legal looks like. I think the serious part for me about the immigration stuff that's going on right now, that they're actually putting and taking people out of their home in a moment, just in a moment, and then putting them in detention centers or detained detention centers where they detain people trying to make that, figure out if they're going to go back, and they're separating families. I really do empathize with this, and not from a foreign country, but I felt the sting of what that would be like because I've traveled for 2 years, and every time they have stopped me in the United States and checked me for explosives. Okay, and they let 20 other people go behind me, and something about my color, something about what I might look like has stopped me and stopped me, had it now for 2 years, and wiped my hands. The second time they did me, I asked why they wiped my hands. And they said we're checking for explosives. And so, I don't want to compare it to immigration, but it just, the thing that troubles me all about this country right now is everybody of color is suspect. People that are coming from other countries trying to make a better way, political, foreign countries, refugees, Somalia, all over the United States, everywhere. Trying to make a better way for their children born in the United States, and the United States is turning their children, they're turning the parents away from the children. It's just crazy kind of stuff for me. But yeah, sometimes we do see people come into shelter from other countries, but they're from other major cities in the United States. And the Midwest, like she said, it's welcoming. There's work here and things like that. It's just fine irony in the immigration laws right now that, we want to talk about the packing economy. The majority of people that work at packing are from other countries. But yeah, we don't really take that into consideration as part of the labor force.
Which really goes back to why we decided this was such a timely panel to have.
Oh, yeah.
Was because there is so much going on, and I don't think a lot of us understand it because we don't work in it.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't a part of that community ourselves, and yet it's so important for us to know.
And I'm so glad that you brought up your experiences and intersectionality. I mean, a lot of these issues, I mean, they're not an isolated thing that's just happening to one group of people. And it's really important to remember that and to always be cognizant that that is what's happening. And also to touch just a little bit more on housing. I mean, a lot of us don't access those temporary housing problems because, like we talked about, community strength and community support. Most of the time, especially families, and there are tight-knit communities, they'll take in each other. I've got into a flat where there are 5 or 6 families living in a 2-bedroom house. So even though they're not at homeless shelters, temporary housing and homelessness is still a huge issue. It's just the families supporting each other. And it makes sense to me that it would be people who are new, who migrated here from a different city, who probably don't have as good of connections even to their own community, to have that kind of community support.
I want to add up to that. I have 2 points. One, we have a transitional housing program, which could be great for our immigrant families or refugee families who are in need of just that time, while they're waiting, between probably transitioning from Catholic, when the Catholic charity is no longer able to provide enough funding, or if they just in transition between that and finding a home for themselves or, affordable housing. We have that program, but again, language becomes another, like she was saying, language becomes a big barrier. So this program is nice. It's helping them, find a job. It's helping them, learn skills, but they can't do all that without that language. So that being said, most of our families anyway, as she's saying, will look for friends or other families to double up with. So, and that's where that strong community bond they have. It's there, and it's that looking for that family where they can double up first. And the other thing is, even if you provide them the option to go in transitional housing, they're likely to say no. I have a family that was about to be evicted from their apartment, due to the large, for having a large number of people in the home. I provided them options, and we went through transitional housing, shelters. They didn't really want that, and really when you go back to culture, again, it goes back to shame. They don't want that to be part of their history, that they have to stay in a shelter or a transitional housing. They don't want to have to tell their family or their friends that they were in a shelter. For them, it's shame. So these are always really good things to consider as you're talking to family or even providing these resources. And when they say no, it's really not that they don't want to, but it's really just looking at how they're going to be viewed in their community. So instead, they'll be looking for other family members or friends who can help them out during that time. That's a better option for them at that moment than them feeling that they were in a shelter when they needed the help.
I think one other cultural aspect of the housing is that for a lot of cultures, doubling up is okay. I mean, sleeping 4 people in a bedroom is really not a big deal. But we have housing regulations that say no, it's only acceptable to have X number of people in a house. Mm-hmm. And so that's again kind of that cultural thing that we impose upon people, even though they may find it to be just perfectly acceptable to have large families in a very small space.
Good information to have. This has been very, very, very helpful to have this. Looks like there's one more thing that you want to say. I was going to say it feels like there's a lot more that we could talk about. Kind of feels like we could stay here all night. There's a lot to talk about. And what I would invite us to do is to go ahead and start the mixing and mingling. Go ahead, grab some food, and continue the conversations. Ask the questions. But I know you have some signs for us.
We mentioned on different ways that you can help. If you want to help get the word out in the community that you personally want to let people know that we are a welcoming community, you can get one of these signs. We are asking for a suggested donation of $20. We did have to raise that because we are on our third order. We've distributed over 200 signs already. And so I have 3 available here, and there's also a sign-up form if you would like to take one as well. So it just helps spread the message. You probably have seen them as you've gone around the community, and hopefully people are taking notice. There's English on both sides in blue, and then there are 4 other languages that are the most common languages to put up.
We also have handouts and just reports on what's currently happening with our organization. So if you're not too familiar with HACAP and programs that are that HACAP is involved with, there's handouts, there's brochures over there, and we have our Head Start and just the general HACAP annual report from last year. So
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.